So Gertrude is the country coordinator for an organization, a networking organization called PELAM, which is Participatory Ecological Land Use Management. And she has worked in civil society organizations for 17 years to raise conscientiousness on agroecology, food systems, gender information and communication technologies, and livelihoods on practical and political intervention levels. Gertrude is a worker, and she has a master's degree in development studies, as well as a BSc in journalism and media studies. She's an award-winning journalist, by the way, and so beautiful that she's here today. She's also in the African Earth Jurisprudence Collective. So today she's bringing all her experiences that she's had working at a national level here in Zimbabwe. Gertrude, you're welcome. I'm also going to just do a short one from by Caroline. So Caroline studied forestry and natural resources management in Belgium and moved to Zimbabwe in 2002. Caroline, we love you here in Zim. We hope you're not looking forward to moving anytime soon. So she came here to work for the World Agroforestry Center. Since 2013, she's the project manager at Bioinnovation Zimbabwe, which we famously know as BEES. And she researches indigenous plants for their commercial potential. So she works a lot with communities as well. In 2017, she started a small private company with some BEES colleagues. It's called Wutano Foods, which means healthy foods. She makes breakfast and snacks products from local ingredients sourced from farmers and wild harvesters. So she increases value in the traditional foods that communities already produce. She's been involved in the annual Good Food Festival, which happens in Harare since 2013. And I think you guys turned 10 this year. Congratulations. And also she introduces more consumers to the benefits of traditional diets and promoting the consumption of locally produced healthy foods. These are inspiring women, and so I welcome you to indulge on their story today, and happy World Food Day. I'll hand over to Gertrude at this point.
Great, thank you very much, Precious, and warm greetings to everyone on this show. And for me, it's an honor and a privilege to join the global community in celebrating food, because food is what connects us as human beings. It's at the heart of who we are. It connects us as people, and it tells our stories. Precious introduced me as coming from the Participatory Ecological Land Use Management Zimbabwe. It's a network organization comprising of civil society organizations that are promoting agroecology. So I'll just briefly share the work of PELAM Zimbabwe, allow Caroline to also tell the story of Bioinnovation Zimbabwe and how we came to be in partnership towards something that's much bigger than our individual organization. PELAM Zimbabwe is really taking bold steps to transforming Zimbabwe's agriculture and food systems by upskilling agroecology and linking civil society organizations, smallholder farmers, government, and consumers to take action despite working in a very fragile context. When I talk about the fragile context, I know everyone is aware that we are faced with the climate crisis, and as things continue to unfold, we really need to come up with a transformative path that allows us to continue to produce food in a sustainable way, producing food and being mindful of other beings in the universe, the trees, the rivers, the forests, the insects, and all that we call Earth's children. So the work of PELAM really is beyond recognizing humans as key in the ecosystem or the web of life, we do take into cognizance other forms of life and finding ways of ourselves reconnecting to this web. As we work through civil society organizations, we target smallholder farmers. These are the majority of food producers in Zimbabwe. They are the ones that are responsible for feeding our nations. And I know this is the case in many African countries, that small-scale farmers are at the heart of food production. And as we work with smallholder farmers, we are saying it is important to ensure that food production is done in a way that doesn't harm the environment, that doesn't harm the health of people. It's production of food that is nutritious, food that speaks to our culture, it speaks to our context as Zimbabweans. So for us, we talk about food sovereignty rather than food security. So we have three ambitions as an organization. First, it is to strengthen and deepen agroecology as the pathway towards a more just, regenerative, and viable food and agriculture system in Zimbabwe. We also are working towards strengthening multi-stakeholder district-level community engagements and actions required to transition to agroecology. And last, our ambition is to build and deepen consciousness, skills, and collective capacity for transformative agroecology in Zimbabwe. So we pioneered a multi-year joint learning program called the Zimbabwe Seed Sovereignty Program in 2015. The whole objective of this program is to strengthen farmer-managed seed systems in Zimbabwe. It is a principle-driven joint learning collaboration consisting of 10 organizations working directly with smallholder farmers to restore seed sovereignty, food and nutrition security, and increase farmers' resilience to climate shocks and pandemics. This program's vision is actually towards seed sovereign farming communities who improve and sustain their livelihoods. So at the core of this joint learning program is the protection, the promotion of farmers' rights and their ability to produce, trade, and save a wide diversity of farm-saved seeds of high quality. And when we talk about farm-saved seeds, these are really rooted in our traditional diets, the seeds that were kept by our grandmothers. You see how this is connected to our collaboration with BIZ as we co-coordinate the food festival. The other program that Pelham is facilitating is a joint learning program around landscape regeneration. This again is a multi-year principle-driven program that was piloted in 2020, and it seeks to regenerate landscapes for prosperity, resilience, and harmony by combining traditional ecological knowledge with a new technique around holistic plant grazing. It's targeting 5 communities, 5 districts in Zimbabwe and 1 community in Tharaka, Kenya. Through community-to-community exchange visits, convergence, trainings in traditional ecological knowledge and holistic plant grazing and documentation, we seek to create a network of communities that are reconnecting themselves in their landscapes and increasingly practicing plant grazing with their livestock to regenerate depleted landscapes with depleted landscapes. We feel that it's important when we talk about food, we really need to understand that the beginning of conversations around food is healthy soils. So for us as Pelham, the network, our emphasis is on ensuring that we have healthy soils and we strengthen farmers' capacities to regenerate the soils so that when the food is produced, we are producing healthy food that is able to sustain our bodies, but at the same time, we revive the ecosystem and ensure that other beings in the universe also survive well. Then last, we have a joint learning program around agroecology markets. We realized that there was a lot of conversation around food production as we were seeking a transitioning towards agroecology. Much emphasis was put on food production. Much emphasis was being put on technical skills, but very little conversations were happening around markets, transforming markets. And we pioneered this joint learning program again in partnership with the Knowledge Transfer Africa. And the real objective of this joint learning program is to transform how markets are viewed and supported by various stakeholders in Zimbabwe. We are thinking more around markets that are controlled by smallholder farmers. In other contexts, they are called territorial markets. In other instances, they are called local markets. So these are the markets that we really want to promote. And they provide an alternative food source for the majority of citizens in Zimbabwe, both rural and urban. So for us, markets are key in finding ways of linking the urban and the rural. We also want to stimulate and promote supply and demand of agroecology products and contribute to Zimbabwe's food and nutrition security, and which would ultimately lead to food sovereignty. And last, we also want to support agroecology farmers and value chain actors to expand market shares, resolve bottlenecks, and document learning. So in a nutshell, our work is bringing different ways of thinking, mechanisms on possible pathways that Zimbabweans and other communities within Africa and beyond say, how do we transition towards a just and more progressive way of living in harmony with nature. And for us, it's really thinking about the economy, is thinking about the ecology, and is thinking about the people. So in all the work that we're doing around food, as we celebrate food, we are also celebrating life. We are celebrating the soils that help us to produce healthy food. We are celebrating the farmers who hold the knowledge around food. We are celebrating the practices and the rituals that are done in Africa that have held the production of healthy food. We are also celebrating the bigger web of life. So let me stop there and pass it on to my colleague Caroline, who will say a little bit also about the Bio-Innovation Zimbabwe. Over to you, Caroline.
So at Bio-Innovation Zimbabwe, we work with local indigenous plants, plants that are found in the wild, in forests. And then we also work with cultivated crops. So why are local plants relevant and important to Zimbabwe? We have nearly 6,000 different plant species in Zimbabwe, and about 1/5 of those plants actually have commercial potential, but only 1% or even less than 1% of these local plants are currently being commercially exploited. In Zimbabwe, we have 16 million people, and more than half of these people live in rural areas. And of the people living in rural areas, 60 to 70% of these people are considered poor or even extremely poor. And these very poor people also live in the driest areas of Zimbabwe, where agriculture is severely constrained, due to limited and erratic rainfall. And these areas, they occupy 62% of the country's available land. And in these areas, poverty rates exceed even 80%. When you go to the rural areas in Zimbabwe, this is probably the typical image of a rural area in Zimbabwe. You can see, the farm, the homesteads, it all looks, very dry. But I hope you can also see, the enormous baobab tree in the picture, and that's exactly, in these very poor dryland areas, there are a wide range of indigenous plants, And these plants, they do survive the regular droughts that affect, our areas here. And historically, people have always relied on these indigenous plants for their health and well-being. It's only in the last sort of 5-6 generations that productive patterns have shifted. There are so very many benefits to local plants. They offer an income generating option in areas where literally, there are no other income generating options. They are very suitable for, your poorer producers, your elderly women, the mothers with school going children, the poor people with very little land. They are very often wild harvested, so they are accessible to most people. They can give an off-farm income generation. Even if people have sufficient land to grow crops, we have very many bad rainy seasons, so they can give off-farm income generation for those bad seasons, because these plants, we call them non-timber forest products often, that's the NTFP. They're more resilient, or they're resilient to the effects of climate change. So when your crops fail, your baobab trees and your marilla trees, they will still fruit. But not only do they offer income generation and solutions during bad rainy seasons, but even during better rainy seasons, they will offer additional income generation during the off season, because very often, these plants, the parts and the products that you get from them, you get them at different times from your conventional crops. And what we've also noticed at BioInnovation Zimbabwe is that when you give these natural resources an economic value, it also protects them, because it encourages local communities to conserve their natural resources. And obviously also they add such important diversity to the food basket. So the question then is, why aren't all smallholder farmers collecting and producing these local plants? Why do we still see so many of these miserable looking fields with completely failed maize crop? And why don't we see more of women coming back from a day in the forest, carrying bags and buckets full of local fruits? And I think the very simple and short answer to that is that, unfortunately, the markets for these local products, they're either non-existent, or they're very, very small, or they're very hard for local producers to access. And that is mostly because consumers have been brainwashed into thinking that these indigenous plants and the products that come from these indigenous plants are somehow inferior to the exotic plants, that were introduced from somewhere else. And that's where we, as BioInnovation, decided, that we needed to do something about the situation. We were founded in 2011, so we are a good 10 years old as well. And we research indigenous plants and traditional crops for their commercial potential. Our focus, dryland areas of Zimbabwe, where an over-reliance on exotic cash crops has rendered the farmers very vulnerable to the effects of climate change. Our goal, develop market opportunities for indigenous plants that allow households to diversify their production base and strengthen their resilience. Most of the plants we work with are fruit plants, but we also work with plants, with other applications, medicinal, cosmetic, sometimes even just ornamental applications. These are the 4 broad areas that we work in. We basically, when you look at it, we intervene where needed at all levels of the value chain, basically. From production through processing. We also work a lot with private sector, and then we also, of course, work with consumers at the end of the value chain. Do a lot of resource assessments, helping farmers to identify the species that have the most commercial potential. We work around domestication, propagation, sustainable harvesting. Sometimes where markets require, we also help communities with certification, like your organic certification or your Fair Wild certification or your Global GAP certification. With private sector, we work a lot around product development and also markets, sort of trying to understand the markets. And then, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more with Gertrude just now. We also work a lot around consumer awareness raising, because obviously, you know, when you have crops and you have products, you still that your consumers also need to be aware that these things exist, and what, you know, how incredible these products are, not only delicious but also with many benefits. And we actually also really working towards changing the negative perception that very many people, even though it has, you know, in the last 10 years, it has really changed already, but the very negative perception that many people still have around local indigenous traditional foods, you know, they still very often associate them with poverty or, you know, with being uncool. So we do a lot of work to try and address these kind of things. This one is a local herbal tea called Zumbani, or the fever tea tree in English. Became very popular during COVID because it's traditionally consumed to treat flu-like symptoms, which are the very same symptoms that you get with COVID. This one is another local herbal tea called Resurrection Bush. The Resurrection Bush, because as you can see in the picture, they look like pretty dry, dead sticks most of the year. But then as soon as they get a little bit of water, they resurrect, and then you'll see that the whole rock, the whole hill will turn green when the plant resurrects. We also work with Kalahari melon. Kalahari melon is the ancestor of the watermelon, where we teach farmers how to, you know, grow the melons, but also how to process, as in how to get the seed out, because the seed makes a very good cosmetic oil. Like I said, we also work with private sector, you know, trying to improve processing and production. This is where we were trying to make, you know, the processing of the baobab fruits to get to the powder and the seed more efficient. And then, yeah, like I said, also we work a lot with private sector around product development. So this is a tea that we launched on the Zimbabwe markets a couple of years ago in collaboration with a private company called Peter Lilly, where we blended a very popular and well-loved tea, Rooibos, with the local tea Resurrection Bush, to get consumers familiar and introduce the Resurrection Bush tea to consumers in Zimbabwe. Also, we've with another company, we've been developing, formulating ice lollies, or what we call here frizzets, with again local ingredients like Zumbani, baobab powder, Rosella tea as well, hibiscus tea. A local nut, just, you know, nicely packaged, makes all of a sudden makes it like a very interesting and exotic product, but it's a 100% local nut. And then this is a porridge we developed with a company that has sorghum, groundnuts, and baobab powder in it. Instant porridge, very nice. Because of course we don't want to just be seen as if we are extracting all these valuable ingredients, you know, out of communities. For the Harare markets and for exports. We also work a lot around the promotion and making the consumption of these traditional and indigenous foods easier, you know, at the local level as well. So we do a lot of nutrition trainings focused on traditional crops and wild plants. We teach people about balanced diets, but where we talk about readily available local foods, you know, to form like healthy plates, things like that. Our trainings are very practical. You know, we share recipes, we do cooking demos, or we prepare lunch all together, you know, that we will then enjoy after a training. We do a lot of like collection of local recipes as well, and writing booklets, you know, to make sure that all of that sort of traditional local knowledge doesn't get lost. And we also, you know, organize annual district food fairs where we try and bring some fun by having cooking competitions between farmers. Because these a lot of these traditional crops are also not that easy to process and to cook, and so as a result often have quality issues. We also work a lot around trying to address these issues, like with local manufacturing companies, engineering companies. We've designed small grains threshers. In the picture you see it's a bambara nut or a round nut sheller. We've looked at trying to identify among all the varieties in small grains, the ones that cook faster. We've looked at techniques also to make these small grains cook faster. We've introduced easy, fuel-efficient cooking solutions, like, for example, hot box cookers in communities, which is basically a box where you first cook your beans on the stove, and then after like maybe a few minutes, you then place the pot in the box, and it's a very insulated box, with grass and banana leaves and things like that. And so the beans continue cooking and then also remain hot while in the box. And what is also very, very important to us, again, talking to why, we find it very, very important that we, besides growing national economies and looking at exports, we also, grow locally, very hyper local economies, and that, that the ingredients and the foods that we try and promote outside communities, that they are also very much consumed within communities. And that's also why, with the private partners that buy ingredients from our communities, we also always look at mechanisms to help keep these nutritious foods within the communities, once they've been value added. So for example, we'll make sure that a private company that buys a small grain like sorghum to produce a porridge in Harare, that they also supply the local retailers back in the communities with that porridge, or that they, for example, pay the farmers partly or additionally, as a commission in porridge. Or we get them to do a bit of like corporate social responsibility, where, for example, they will donate some of the porridge to a school feeding program or something like that. I wanted to just say that then, in 2013, what happened is that Bio Innovation Zimbabwe and Pelham and very many other organizations sort of joined forces, because we were all sort of facing and trying to address the same problems, limited markets for the traditional crops and plants that grow best for Zimbabwean producers, a shortage of healthy foods made from local ingredients available to Zimbabwean consumers, and also just because we felt that it was high time to celebrate, food in Zimbabwe. And that's why in 2013, we organized our very first Good Food and Seed Festival in Harare. I don't know if you want to come in, Richard, or if you want me to keep. Yeah, all right.
Yes. So for us, really, it's as we are joining the global community in commemorating the World Food Day, it's acknowledging that there's a lot that needs to be done around food. It's the work at the practical level and the work at the political level. It's about systems transformation. So there's a great deal of more work that still needs to be done to transform our agriculture and food system. And for us also, it's finding ways, as Caroline has already said, it's how do we connect the different efforts being done by individual organizations so that we truly transform our food system and our agriculture system. So it's adding value to this transformative process. It's how, as Pelham, we are adding value to the transformative process. It's how BIC is adding value as well. So each individual organization is bringing their expertise, and this expertise is what helps us to then deepen the work at grassroots level where the production is happening, value addition is happening, but also build a stronger voice that is able to influence policies that help us to create a conducive environment where farmers' rights are protected, where the right to food is protected, where really we are honoring the rights of Mother Nature. So perhaps, Caroline, you want to say something about how we came together to hold this this event called the Food and Seed Festival at national level, really bringing the different works that individual organizations are doing, and then creating something much bigger than individual organization could hold.
Exactly, and that's basically since 2013 what we've been trying to do. And literally, I mean, except for the 2020, the COVID year, when we weren't able to do a physical event, but since 2013, we've had an annual Good Food and Seed Festival at first it started just in Harare, and then, then we started also having mini festivals in the districts, and I'm sure Gertrude will say something about that just now. But so the idea was we wanted to increase the cultivation and the consumption of nutritious, traditional, and organically grown foods, and we wanted to do that. We wanted to do this in a fun way, because very often when people talk about foods, it's we always look at everything that goes wrong, and we didn't want to talk about anything. We didn't want to talk about anything negative. We wanted to celebrate. We wanted a festival. We've had thousands of visitors, and since 2020, since the COVID year, we even have a virtual component to our festival. So it means we're reaching tens of thousands of people every year now with our festival. Maybe I can just say, just before I then give back to you, Richard, to maybe talk about the mini festivals. I just wanted to say that in 2020 we also launched a new website. We already had a website, but we gave it a really nice update in 2020. It's www.naturallyzimbabwean.com, and you should really have a look at it. It carries the festival messages. It's got the booklets that we publish every year. You can access them on the website as well. It's got lots of recipes, farmer stories. And I think it's a way to be present throughout the year as well.
There's also, as Caroline has pointed, the aspect of markets, creating viable markets for smallholder farmers and giving the farmers the confidence to trade, sell and exchange farm-safe seeds, and to also come together for the sharing of knowledge around the seed, around how certain dishes are cooked in a fun way. And this is also done in a way that incorporates the involvement of young people. So we also realized that having a festival just in Harare, it would just reach a few people. And our desire from the very beginning is to reach as many people as possible in Zimbabwe. So we did pilot during the COVID crisis. We piloted decentralized food and seed festivals in Chimanimani and in Masvingo. And for the whole reason really was to begin to bring the festival right to the people who would benefit from it, the farmers and also the citizens who consume the food that is produced by the farmers. This was a success in 2020, 2021, and in 2022, we expanded the districts that we were targeting in terms of decentralizing the food and seed festival from it being a national event to also target farmers at a district level. So we went to 5 districts and reached thousands of farmers. It's cheaper, it's more efficient, it's also geographically appropriate because the kinds of foods and seeds that farmers exchange, that farmers cook at those particular districts speak to their context, speak to their cultures, and also speak to their environment. So for us, this is quite an exciting opportunity to further share our learnings, the learnings that we have been having at a national level, how to bring different stakeholders towards a collective goal, and also enabling farmers to come together to exchange seed, to sell seed, to expand their markets, to also have a face-to-face interaction with the public, and also to introduce healthy foods to the general community so that we influence their eating patterns, we influence their mindsets to begin to value traditional diets, particularly food and the seed that is grown in Zimbabwe.
You know, just 3 weeks ago, we then had the Harare, the National Good Food and Seed Festival over 2 days. So the first day, and I'm going to pass it immediately back to you, Gertrude, the first day, which was the National Seed Fair Day on the 23rd of September, also saw the launch of 2 important campaigns in Zimbabwe. And I wanted you to quickly say something about that, Gertrude.
Yes, as I have indicated, for us, this work goes beyond the practical work. We also want to influence policies at national level, which also then feed into policies at regional level. So we launched 2 campaigns. The first campaign is called the My Food is African campaign. This is a campaign that we're doing in partnership with the Alliance for Food Sovereignty in Africa. It's really around ensuring that we have an African food policy for Africa, because currently there is no African food policy in Africa. And it's a campaign that is intended to mobilize citizens towards a healthy diet and eating nutritious, culturally appropriate foods. So the campaign was first launched in Zimbabwe, and it is being piloted in 10 African countries. And the whole idea is to work closely with the African Union towards the development of an African food policy. We also piloted another campaign towards farmers' rights. This was done in partnership with the Seed and Knowledge Initiative that's working in 4 Southern African countries: South Africa, Zimbabwe, Malawi, and Zambia. And the campaign is really saying our seeds, our life, our heritage. And it's recognizing that farmers are the custodians of seed, and they should be given the right to grow these traditional seeds, to save them, to exchange them, and to enhance them. The farmers are the holders of wisdom in terms of plant breeding. The notion that only technical plant breeders understand about breeding is all wrong, because farmers have been breeding different types of seeds, and this is happening within the auspices of farmer-managed seed systems. So our advocacy is towards strengthening of farmer-managed seed systems so that farmers are supported in doing what they have been doing for thousands of years. That is protecting our plant genetic resources for food and agriculture, but also whilst they are doing this, they're taking care of the environment. So these campaigns are very important to us. We will be running with the My Food is African campaign for the next 4 years, because we understand that transforming mindsets towards people accepting that my food is African, it is going to take time. It's about decolonizing the mind. It's about changing attitude and perceptions towards African food. And it's about reconnecting Africans, and particularly Zimbabweans, to the foods that are culturally grown in their communities, the foods that support their cultures. This is very much linked to tradition, to culture, to rituals, to protection of sacred natural sites and territories, to the creation of spaces that are sacred in our communities. So for us, the African cosmology is at the heart of the My Food is African. And I'm really excited that we launched this, and it was supported by the Food and Nutrition Council, the government wing that is responsible for food and nutrition in the country. So over the next 4 years, we'll be running with the My Food is African campaign, and also a campaign towards promoting farmers' rights. Over to you, Caroline.
Thanks, Gertrude. I think I just wanted to finish by showing you a few pictures also of the following date and the festival data that was now open to the general public. We had a whole lot of stalls, over 80 stalls actually in the markets. In the market section, the seat section, and then in the food court. And the stalls in the market section, as you can see, they were the stall holders, the exhibitors had brought, traditional grains, legumes and herbs, local teas, local nut butters that had been made from not just groundnuts but other local nuts. We had stalls selling drinks that were made from local fruits. Then very importantly, we also had cooking demonstrations. How to prepare dishes, and not just your traditional dishes, but also dishes that were using traditional ingredients, but in a modern way. And then we had a very big food court, again, offering, the traditional Zimbabwean cuisine, but also, more modern dishes, but again, always with these same Zimbabwean ingredients. So here, for example, in the picture, you can see local nuts, a local nut called hacha. You can see popped amaranth, you can see sorghum, you can see sweet potato, you can see amaranth leaves, there's cowpeas, there's round nuts, all making delicious salads. Of course, good food has to go with good music, so we had some really popular artists performing at this year's festival. And then very, very important for us is also the kids, of course, the future producers and consumers. So we always pay a lot of attention to kids participating as well. Some of them had stalls, and then there was a kids zone as well where they could learn about traditional dance and music, and they were playing local games and learning at the same time, also learning about nutrition and agriculture in Zimbabwe.
Yes, just hearing from you narrating our future plans about the road trip, continuously having engagements virtually, documenting more exciting videos and sharing, it really is trying to touch on the entire food system. So from production to consumption to the marketing aspects, that's where the festival is going, really. So it's bringing the whole angles that are vital in creating a viable and sustainable food system, so that at the end of the year, when we meet and celebrate, when we meet for that big event, the Good Food and Seed Festival, we would have done groundwork, working with the farmers, with the different organizations, increasing production, addressing issues to do with policy as well, continuous engagements, exposure visits. A lot is happening within Zimbabwe around food and around transforming our food system in Zimbabwe. And as we join the world in commemorating World Food Day, I just want to say that for me, the festival, the Good Food Festival, is not just about food, it's about life. It's about recognizing the rights of farmers. It's about recognizing the rights of Mother Earth. It's about recognizing gender equality. It's about social justice. It's about a whole lot of rights that need to be upheld, protected, and promoted. So we join the world in commemorating World Food Day and honor the work that is being done by smallholder farmers in bringing the gifts of ancestral wisdom that has been passed from generation to generation on how to grow traditional foods and to cook them in healthy ways, but also to serve or to protect and to serve farm-safe seeds in a way that allows us to produce diverse diets in Zimbabwe and come up with incredible dishes and cuisines in Zimbabwe. So thank you so much for joining us in this conversation. I think I can hand it back to you, Precious.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, to the people who are listening and watching, to please enjoy the few videos that we've lined up for you at the end of our presentation. And happy World Food Day to everyone, and bye.
Thank you so much for bringing the story of African food and for also demystifying the idea that African food, seed, and agriculture is backwards and has no value and needs to be spruced up. That is absolutely not true. We just need, as you have said, to focus on really putting our energy and resources to bring back that narrative. And also, again, understanding that we've evolved with this food thing. It's not only just to the mouth, the tummy, and the bathroom, but it is at the core of our being, our spirituality, social gatherings, economies, and how we are tied back to the environment and the soil that has taken care of us and those that have gone before us. Us as human beings and other beings under the soil, all of us need to really understand that deep connection. And as such, we honor everyone who is involved in producing work that has to do with food, everyone who has a voice to really talk about food at every other platform, everyone who embraces the idea that food is us and we are food. So our food is indeed African.
Well, I can't believe it, but it's 10 years, so happy 10th anniversary to the Good Food Festival.
I cannot believe it's 10 years.
Hi, my name is Vera. I'm here at the Kids Zone, and happy 10-year anniversary to the Good Food Festival. Mwah!
I want to say happy 10-year anniversary to my favorite festival in Zimbabwe. That's the Good Food Festival. Now we want to call it the Good Food and Good Music Festival.
Shout out to Good Food Festival.
We hope and wish for more and more years of this festival.
Well done, congratulations, and here's to another 20 more.
Happy 10th year anniversary! Woo! But you know, we're just over here at the Good Food Festival, and I love it. Oh my God! Famba, chipinda mumastozi, momo, chungona chikafu chakasiyana sana. You know what I mean? And my favorite part was the salad part. You guys, it's amazing. It's amazing, and you can see the vibes. You can see everyone is just chilling, cooking demos. One of my demos, and then parikubikwa tima recipe, to complicated, but also not really complicated. But my chef,
Well, actually, I think the name of the festival is really nice because it's actually really good food, so it's quite interesting. We just visited different stands, different places, and we bought some flour and some aloe vera, and then we went just to chill and eat some oxtail and sadza, so it was really nice.
There's such a vibe at the Good Food Festival. Everyone should be here. If you're not here, ameno. Asibo hapo, murukuruzinda.
we had a wonderful time. We had such a wonderful time that we sold all our stock already within the first 3 hours.
It's been amazing. 10 years of excellence, 10 years of great music, 10 years of having amazing artists of different genres, different feeling, and bringing this to the food that we have in Zimbabwe.
Thanks so much for watching. To see the next clip, please go to facebook.com/regenerationinternational/live.